A man in a business suit boarded a commercial flight on Thanksgiving Eve 1971. He ordered a bourbon and soda. He was polite, he was calm, and then he hijacked the plane. What happened next became the only unsolved commercial airline hijacking in the history of the United States, and nobody knows who he was, or where he went, or if he even survived. On the afternoon of November 24, 1971, a quiet, middle-aged man approached the Northwest Orient Airlines counter at Portland Airport in Oregon. He paid cash for a one-way ticket on Flight 305 to Seattle, Washington. He gave his name as Dan Cooper. He wore a black business suit, a black tie, and a white shirt. He carried a briefcase. Nothing about him stood out. He was just another passenger on a routine one-hour flight. Shortly after 3 p.m., he handed a flight attendant a note. It said he had a bomb in his briefcase. He showed her what appeared to be wires and red cylinders inside the case. He was not aggressive. He did not raise his voice. He simply and calmly told her his demands. $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle. If his demands were not met, he would detonate the device and bring down the plane with everyone on board. The flight landed in Seattle. Authorities on the ground scrambled to meet his demands. The 36 passengers were released in exchange for the money and the parachutes. Cooper kept the crew. He ordered the pilots to fly to Mexico City at the lowest possible altitude and with the landing gear down, slowing the aircraft significantly. As the plane flew south over Washington state, somewhere between Seattle and Reno, Nevada, at around 8 p.m., Cooper did something nobody expected. He lowered the rear staircase of the Boeing 727. He tied the money bag shut using cord from one of the parachutes. And then he jumped out of the back of the plane into a dark, stormy November night over remote, heavily wooded mountains. The pilots felt the change in cabin pressure. They never saw him again. The FBI launched one of the most extensive investigations in American history. They called it NORJAK, Northwest Hijacking. They searched the mountains of southwest Washington for months. Nothing. They interviewed hundreds of people, and over the following decades processed more than 1,000 serious suspects. Nothing. They used an Air Force SR-71 Blackbird spy plane to photograph the flight path from the air. Nothing. Cooper had simply vanished. Here's where it gets even stranger. Cooper left almost no evidence behind. He took his ransom note back from the flight attendant. He left no fingerprints anywhere on the plane. All he left was a black clip-on tie torn from his collar before he jumped and a few cigarette butts. FBI files released in 2025 revealed that Cooper's tie contained more than 100,000 microscopic particles, including rare metals like bismuth and unalloyed titanium. This has led investigators to believe Cooper may have worked in a specialized manufacturing facility, possibly with connections to Boeing, someone who knew exactly how that plane worked from the inside. Then, in 1980, a breakthrough. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sandy bank of the Columbia River near Portland when he found a rotting bundle of $20 bills. The serial numbers matched exactly. It was $5,800 of the original ransom. But here is the thing that baffles investigators to this day. The money appeared to have entered the river not in 1971, but several months later in spring. Which means someone moved it. Someone had it after the jump, and they put it there deliberately, or accidentally, but someone had it, that someone was never found. So who was D.B. Cooper? Over 50 years, investigators and amateur sleuths have proposed hundreds of suspects. Theory 1, he was a military veteran with parachute training who knew exactly what he was doing and disappeared back into civilian life without ever spending a single dollar. Theory 2, he died in the jump. The parachute he used could not be steered. His shoes were inadequate for landing in rough terrain. The temperature was below freezing and the area was dense, remote wilderness. Theory 3, the most chilling of all. He was never who anyone thought he was. The name Dan Cooper was not a mistake or an alias chosen randomly. Dan Cooper is the name of a Belgian comic book character, a Canadian Royal Air Force pilot who makes daring parachute jumps. Investigators have long wondered whether Cooper was communicating something about himself with that name, whether it was a signature. The FBI officially closed the NORJAK case in July 2016 after 45 years of active investigation. It remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in the history of commercial aviation. The $200,000 he took would be worth $1.6 million today. The tie he left behind sits in an FBI evidence vault. His face on the wanted poster has become one of the most recognized images in American criminal history. And somewhere out there, in the mountains of Washington State or at the bottom of the Columbia River, or perhaps living quietly under a different name, is the answer to the question the world has been asking for over 50 years. Who was D.B. Cooper, and what happened to him that night? Drop your theory in the comments. Was he a genius who got away clean? A desperate man who died in the dark? Or something else entirely? I read every single one. Subscribe to GlowGyst because the darkest stories are the ones nobody solved.